seed time and harvest. Chapter 2, the four mighty ones. Quote, and a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into four heads. End quote. Genesis chapter 2, verse 10. Quote, and every one had four faces. Ezekiel chapter 10, verse 14. Quote, I see four men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. Daniel chapter 3, verse 25. Four mighty ones are in every man. Blake. The quote, four mighty ones, end quote, constitute the selfhood of man or God in man. There are, quote, four mighty ones in every man. But these, quote, four mighty ones are not four separate beings, separated one from the other, as there are the fingers on your hand. The quote, four mighty ones, are four different aspects of your mind and differ from one another in function and character without being four separate selves inhabiting one man's body. The quote, four mighty ones, may be equated with the four Hebrew characters Yod, He, Va, He, which form the four-lettered mystery name of the creative power, occasionally referred to as Yahweh or Jehovah. From the combining within itself the past, present, and future forms of the verb to be. The tetragrammaton is revered as the symbol of the creative power in man. I am. The creative four functions in man reaching forth to realize in actual material phenomenon qualities latent in itself. We can best understand, quote, the four mighty ones by comparing them to the four most important characters in the production of a play. Quote, all the worlds is a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. End quote. From As You Like It, Act 2, Scene 7. The producer, the author, the director, and the actor are the four most important characters in the production of a play. In the drama of life, the producer's function is to suggest the theme of a play, This he does in the form of a wish, such as, quote, I wish I were successful, end quote. I wish I could take a trip, end quote. I wish I were married, and so on. But to appear on the world stage, these general themes must somehow be specified and worked out in detail. It is not enough to say, quote, I wish I were successful, end quote. That is too vague. Successful at what? However, the first, quote, mighty one only suggests a theme. The dramatization of the theme is left to the originality of the second, quote, mighty one, that is, the author. In dramatizing the theme, the author writes only the last scene of the play. But this scene, he writes in detail. The scene must dramatize the wish fulfilled. It is the end of the play that shows that the wish has been realized. He mentally constructs as lifelike a scene as possible of what he would experience had he realized his wish. When the scene is clearly visualized, the author's work is done. Now, the third, quote, mighty one in the production of life's play is the director. The director's tasks are to see that the actor remains faithful to the script and to rehearse him over and over again until he is natural in the part. This function may be likened to a controlled and consciously directed attention. An attention focused exclusively on the action, which implies that the wish is already realized. Quote, the form of the fourth is like the Son of God, end quote. That is human imagination, the actor. This fourth, quote, mighty one, performs within himself, in imagination, the predetermined action which implies the fulfillment of the wish. This function does not visualize or observe the action. No. This function actually enacts the drama and does it over and over again until it takes on the tones of reality. This actor participates in the action, in the drama, in the imagination. Without the dramatized vision of fulfilled desire, the theme remains a mere theme and sleeps forever in the vast chambers of unborn themes. Nor without the corporate or cooperant attention, obedient to the dramatized vision of fulfilled desire, will the vision perceived attain objective reality. Without the dramatized vision of fulfilled desire, the theme remains a mere theme and sleeps forever in the vast chambers of unborn themes, nor, without the cooperant attention, obedience to the dramatized vision of fulfilled desire, will the vision perceived attain objective reality. The quote, four mighty ones, are the four quarters of the human mind. The first is Jehovah's King, who suggests the theme. The second is Jehovah's servant, who faithfully works out the theme in a dramatic vision. The third is Jehovah's man, who was attentive and obedient to the vision of fulfilled desire, who brings the wandering imagination back to the script. Quote, 70 times 7, end quote. That is, that brings the imagination back squarely focused on the script of the theme of fulfilled desire and does not allow it to waver or wander in many thousand directions, but to stay on the script already written out as the theme. The quote form of the fourth is Jehovah himself, who enacts the dramatized theme on the stage of the mind. Quote, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God. End quote. Philippians chapter 2, verse 5 and 6. The drama of life is a joint effort of the four quarters of the human soul. Quote, all that you behold, though it appears without, it is within, in your imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow. End quote. This is by Blake. All that we behold is a visual construction contrived to express a theme which has been dramatized, rehearsed, and performed elsewhere. What we are witnessing on the stage of the world is an optical construction devised to express the themes which have been dramatized, rehearsed, and performed in the imagination of men. The quote, four mighty ones, constitute the selfhood of man, or God in man, and all that man beholds, though it appears without, are but shadows cast upon the screen of space, that is, optical constructions contrived by selfhood to inform him in regard to the themes which he has conceived, dramatized, rehearsed, and performed within himself. Quote, the creature was made subject unto vanity, end quote, that he may become conscious of selfhood and its function. For with consciousness of selfhood and its functions, he can act to a purpose. He can have a consciously self-determined history. Without consciousness, he acts unconsciously and cries to an objective God to save him from his own creation. Quote, O Lord, how long shall I cry, and thou wilt not hear? Even cry out, unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save. End quote. Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 2. When man discovers that life is a play which he himself is consciously or unconsciously writing, he will cease from the blind self-torture of executing judgment upon others. Instead, he will rewrite the play to conform to his ideal, for he will realize that all changes in the play must come from the cooperation of the quote, four mighty ones within himself. They alone can alter the script and produce the change. All the men and women in his world are merely players, and as players, they are helpless to change his play, as are the players on the screen of the theater to change the picture. The desired change must be conceived, dramatized, rehearsed, and performed in the theater of his mind. When the fourth function, the imagination, has completed its task of rehearsing the revised version of the play until it is natural, then the curtain will rise upon this so seemingly solid world, and the quote, mighty four will cast a shadow of the real play upon the screen of space. Men and women will automatically play their parts to bring about the fulfillment of the dramatized theme. The players, by reason of their various parts in the world's drama, become relevant to the individual's dramatized theme, and because relevant, are drawn into his drama. They will play their parts faithfully, believing all the while that it was they themselves who initiated the parts they play. This they do because, quote, thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, I in them, and thou in me, end quote. John chapter 17, verse 21 and 23. I am involved in mankind. We are one. We are all playing the four parts of producer, author, director, and actor in the drama of life. Some of us are doing it consciously, others unconsciously. It is necessary that we do it consciously. Only in this way can we be certain of a perfect ending to our play. Then we shall understand why we must become conscious of the four functions of the one God within ourselves, that we may have the companionship of God as his sons. Quote, man should not stay a man. His aim should higher be. For God will only gods accept as company. End quote. Angelus Silesius. In January of 1946, I took my wife and little daughter to Barbados in the British West Indies for a holiday, not knowing there were any difficulties in getting a return passage. I had not booked ours before leaving New York. Upon our arrival in Barbados, I discovered that there were only two ships serving the islands, one from Boston and one from New York. I was told there was no available space on either ship before September, as I had commitments in New York for the first week in May. I put my name on the long waiting list for the April sailing. A few days later, the ship from New York was anchored in the harbor. I observed it very carefully and decided that this was the ship we should take. I returned to my hotel and determined on an inner action that will be mine were we actually sailing on that ship. I settled down in an easy chair in my bedroom to lose myself in this imaginative action. In Barbados, we take a motor launch or rowboat out into the deep harbor when we embark on a large steamer. I knew I must catch the feeling that we were sailing on that ship. I chose the inner action of stepping from the tender and climbing up the gangplank of the steamer. The first time I tried, my attention wandered after I had reached the top of the gangplank. I brought myself back down, and I tried again and again. My attention wandered. I do not recall how many times I carried out this action in my imagination until I reached the deck and looked back at the port with the feeling of sweet sadness at departing. At this time, my attention no longer wandered. I was able to step from the beginning to the end of the gangplank and look back down and feel that feeling of sweet sadness at departing. I was happy to be returning to my home in New York, but nostalgic in saying goodbye to the lovely family and island I was leaving behind. I do recall that in one of my many attempts at walking up the gangplank and the feeling that I was sailing, I fell asleep. After I awoke, I went about the usual social activities of the day and evening. The following morning, I received a call from the steamship company requesting me to come down to their office and pick up our tickets for the April sailing. I was curious to know why Barbados had been chosen to receive the cancellation and why I, at the end of the long waiting list, was to have the reservation. But all that the agent could tell me was that a cable had been received that morning from New York, offering passage for 3. I was not the first the agent had called, but for reasons she could not explain, those she had called said that now they found it inconvenient to sail in April. We sailed on April 20th and arrived in New York on the morning of May the 1st. Just in time for my May engagement. In the production of my play, The Sailing on a Boat That Will Bring Me to New York by the 1st of May, I played the 4 most important characters in my drama. As the producer, I decided to sail on a specific ship at a certain time. Playing the part of the author, I wrote the script. I visualized the inner action, which conformed to the outer action I will take if my desire were realized. As the director, I rehearsed myself, the actor, in the imagined action of climbing the gangplank until that action felt completely natural. This being done, events and people moved swiftly to conform in the outer world to the play I had constructed and enacted in my imagination. Quote, I saw the mystic vision flow and live in men and woods and streams until I could no longer know the stream of life from my own dreams. End quote. This is from George William Russell, AE. I told this story to an audience of mine in San Francisco, and a lady in the audience told me how she had unconsciously used the same technique when she was a young girl. The incident occurred on Christmas Eve. She was feeling very sad and tired and sorry for herself. Her father, whom she adored, had died suddenly. Not only did she feel this loss at the Christmas season, but necessity had forced her to give up her planned college years and to go to work. This rainy Christmas Eve, she was riding home on a San Diego streetcar. The car was filled with gay chatter of happy young people home for the holidays. To hide her tears from those around about her, she stood on the open path at the front of the car and turned her face into the skies to mingle her tears with the rain. With her eyes closed and holding the rail of the car firmly, this is what she said to herself. Quote, this is not the salt of the tears that I taste, but the salt of the sea in the wind. This is not San Diego. This is the South Pacific, and I am sailing into the Bay of Samoa. End quote. And looking up in her imagination, she constructed what she imagined to be the Southern Cross. She lost herself in the contemplation so that all faded around about her. Suddenly, she was at the end of the line and home. 2 weeks later, she received word from a lawyer in Chicago that he was holding $3,000 in American bonds for her, telling her that several years before, an aunt of hers had gone to Europe with instructions that these bonds be turned over to her niece if she did not return to the United States. The lawyer had just received word of the aunt's death and was now carrying out her instructions. A month later, this girl sailed for the islands in the Pacific. It was night when she entered the Bay of Samoa. Looking down, she could see the white foam from the bone of the lady's mouth as the ship plowed through the waves and brought the salt of the sea in the wind. An officer on duty said to her, quote, there is the Southern Cross, end quote. And looking up, she saw the Southern Cross as she had imagined it. In the intervening years, she had many opportunities to use her imagination constructively. But as she had done this unconsciously, She did not realize there was a law behind it all. Now that she understands, she too is consciously playing her 4 major roles in the daily drama of her life, producing plays for the good of others as well as herself. Quote, "Then the soldiers, when they had crucified Jesus, took his garments and made 4 parts, to every soldier a part, and also his coat. Now, the coat was without seam, woven from the top throughout." End quote. John chapter 19, verse 23. End of chapter.